Welcome to the Subtitled podcast. I'm your host, William Miller, and today I'm here sitting on our new couch. This is the first podcast we've done on this nice couch here with Kalin George.
Hello.
So Kalin is going to be providing commentary today on the classic movie Cool Hand Luke, which Kalin actually picked himself. We're classifying this, just to remind everybody, the four kind of different categories of movies that we cover are classic movies, movies that are so bad that they're good, like shitty, brilliant movies, movies that are currently out today, and a guest pick favorite. You know, it might be something completely random, might be bad, might be good, might be somewhere in between. But today we're covering a straight classic, Cool Hand Luke. So I asked Kalin to pick a movie really for this podcast because I know he has good taste in movies. And every single time I come over to his house, he's watching some sort of classic, such as Final Destination 3, the best of all the Final Destinations.
Oh, it's one for the books.
So would you want to tell the people why you chose this podcast today, or rather, why you chose this movie out of all classic movies you could have chosen? Because I kind of did just put you on the spot and text you right out of nowhere, and like, let's pick a classic movie.
Well, when you texted me, I actually watched the movie about a couple days before. I was just browsing Amazon looking for movies, and I thought of that one just from that that monologue the warden does.
Oh, yeah.
I always wanted to see that movie, and I heard a lot of good things about it, and I just decided to watch it one night, and I really liked the movie. That was a solid movie, and then you texted me a couple days later asking to come do a classic movie on your podcast, and just shit kind of aligned like that, and
Yeah,
let's do it.
it worked out. And yeah, because I was really excited. Well, because I had no preconceptions of what this movie was about, even a little bit going into it, and I like really kept myself in the dark before I watched it because you had mentioned it. And I think the only person I mentioned it to before I saw it was my mom, and she was like, "Oh, cool, a western," and I was like, "Oh, cool, like I saw Paul Newman, that would make sense, like some Butch Cassidy type shit." But no. The entire time I was expecting him to get the gun and fucking like shoot the warden in the head and start gunslinging and shit, and it never happened. So I felt like really blue-balled throughout the entire movie for gun. But then once I realized, I was like, oh no, this is a fucking prison movie. This is one of the great classic prison movies that's set in Florida and kind of this bleak landscape that is awesome. So I had to kind of reframe what it was about and where it was coming from for me to really understand how awesome and classic it is, because a lot of people consider this to be one of the greatest movies ever. This is definitely one of Roger Ebert's favorite movies. I was reading his review of it, and I have an excerpt from that because he has a really interesting take on it. But he gave it 4 out of 4, which is his highest rating, obviously. So again, I guess enough talking about it. Let's get into this thing. So this is directed by Stuart Rosenberg, and the screenplay was by Don Pierce and Frank Pearson. So Don Pierce, I don't know if you know, he wrote a novel of the same name, which is what the movie was based upon. And he had never written a script before because he was like an ex-convict. So this was loosely based upon his own life. He was arrested in France and put in jail, and then he escaped from France and then went to America and like all this crazy shit. And then he got put back in jail again there. For, I believe it was similarly to Luke, like some kind of benign thing, like cutting the head off parking meters. Not specifically that, but it was something kind of along those lines. And then they hired, because Don Pierce was an ex-convict and kind of this rugged fucking dude, they hired Frank Pearson, who is a famous screenwriter, to come in and sort of rework the script and get it applicable,
Yeah, make it like able to turn into a film.
Right. Because I guess not everybody's able to write screenplays right off the rip. But Frank Pearson, they were both actually nominated for the Best Adapted Screenplay for the screenplay, which a lot of critics have noted that this movie is really carried by the script and the acting and less so about the artistic direction. I disagree, because I think a lot of, as we were talking about before the podcast, the Christ imagery and whatnot is very intentional and woven throughout the film. So I don't really know where they're coming from with that. The score was done by Lalo Schifrin, and he was also nominated for an Academy Award. Paul Newman, who plays Luke Jackson, Cool Hand Luke, was also nominated. Like this movie, right when it came out, was not only successful at the box office and made a bunch of money, but it was critically accepted as, and it's kind of carried on since. No, it's never because a lot of movies when they first come out will dip, in their rating and whatnot, and then come back up. Like with The Shining, the episode that we did previous to this one, when it first came out, was not successful at all in the box office. So it's interesting that this one kind of was a classic straight out the rip.
It's an instant classic.
Yeah.
Sort of deal.
And then it holds up over time too, which is even better, which I feel like doesn't have. It's really hard. A lot of people will call a movie an instant classic, but
And 5 to 10 years later, no one's really talking about it anymore.
yeah.
Like that one movie, it won like the Oscar for the best picture. I think Crash, which now like when it first came out. Have you seen that movie?
I don't think so.
Well, I heard when it first came out, everyone was rip roaring over it, and it was like the best movie ever made. But now people pan it as like the worst movie to ever win a best Oscar.
Oh,
Best
really?
Picture. Yeah.
That
So-
is funny because a lot of these Oscars, I feel like, are really of their time, and people get sort of this like circle jerk mentality where they'll all be fawning over this one movie, and critics will be all over it, and then it's only a year later that they're like, "Oh shit, this actually wasn't that good." Like,
I think it's happening less so now though with the internet and probably mostly Reddit too, because everyone voices their opinion on Reddit that people don't pay attention to what the critics say as much anymore, because there's been a few times where movies come out and the critics absolutely adore it, and then the audience, the critic rating is 80%, the audience rating 60%. So I feel like less so people are doing that as much as they used to.
yeah, there's like more of a dialogue. The critics are less isolated, I guess.
Have less power because now everyone can voice their opinion on the internet instead of just one critic, writing in the newspaper, and everyone has to read that guy's opinion. Now everyone can voice their opinion out.
Right, right. So you might want to get a little bit closer to the mic. Just yeah, there we go. Just want to make sure we're Austin. Is everything coming loud and clear? Coming through. Austin's he's our producer. He's the head. He's at the helm of a Pineapple Podcast Network. So I guess let's get into this movie. So as I mentioned before, Luke, the first shot of the film shows Luke cutting the head off parking meters while he's drunk. It's really fucking bizarre, and is never, at least I don't know in my research, really why he was doing that. Do you have like any insight, any interpretation?
I have no idea. I want to say in the movie he says he did it because he had like a personal issue with like someone in the town. I want to say.
Oh, okay.
But I'm not. I could be misremembering. But yeah, I always wanted to know why he did that. Why he chose to cut the head off parking meters. Is it some sort of act of like Robin Hood justice, where parking should be free and cutting everything off, or just because he was bored and drunk and wanted to fuck around, like instead of spray painting something, he decided to go cut off heads of parking meters.
Right, because I think a distinct idea in this film about Luke is that he kind of switches, and then based upon your interpretation, he's either a highly principled man who is driven and does escapes multiple times because of his principles and things that he believes in, or he's completely almost nihilistic to a point that he says to Drag at the end, he's like, "Oh boy, you had him beat, you really had him fooled thinking you were," and he said, "No, I've never planned anything in my entire life." So it's almost like, is it Drag that's building up this mythological status of him, or is he actually this highly principled? I think he is just really sort of driven and principled, and that he's willing to kill himself to prove himself right, that things are wrong in the world, and that he has a personal kind of code of ethics, that he doesn't give a fuck about laws and authority, essentially.
I can see where you come from that. I kind of got more of the vibe that he just was more nihilistic and kind of just like did his own thing, and then also the feeling that he didn't like. He enjoyed the spotlight, but he also didn't. He kind of wanted to do his own thing, and people just kind of built him up, like Drag what did, and like they kind of like carried him. And I had a feeling that he enjoyed it, but it's like on the other side, he like also really did not like people looking up to him, because then they had expectations of him to do similar stuff to that, and
Right.
I think it's I could not get a read on the guy. I didn't know which way, because there's essence of both of it,
Yeah.
both sides of that.
Right, I agree. He's very enigmatic in that way, and I think because he sends the picture later on with him with the two girls, so And then when he comes back, he says, "Stop feeding off of me. Do your own thing. Get out there in the world and do it yourself. Stop using this fantasy of me to basically be content sitting in this prison." But also, why would he send it to them in the first place if he didn't want to be built up as a myth of some kind?
I think he wants both. I think he's like he's a pretty good representation of a. I don't think he's mentally stable by any means.
Yeah.
I think he's a good representation of someone who's like not 100% stable with his life, and he wants the attention, he wants the praise, but in the same sense he doesn't, because then that it's a responsibility that he has to carry.
Right. I think that really goes to the idea that he's the perfect kind of anti-hero, that he has this sense of idealism in the way that he has these principles and whatnot, but he's distinctly not a heroic character. He, like you said, he's conflicted and he's contradictory to himself a lot and kind of confusing in a way. So yeah, so one of the themes of this movie that I wanted to talk about, which is prevalent in the very first shot of him cutting the heads off parking meters, is when he gets pulled over by the cops, there's a light that flashes behind him. That's a traffic light. It's a sort of traffic light theme that they weave throughout it, that says violation behind him. And I think that's kind of representative of the authority of kind of the government, and it's a physical view of that, which this movie has heavy themes of anti-authoritarian, fighting the man essentially, like at any point in time, like any sort of authority. Because as we'll see, once he gets to the prison, he immediately challenges Drag's authority in the prison. And something that I noticed was that when he first comes in, everybody's going by nicknames: Rabbit, Society, Gambler, and they seem to kind of be entwined with what their crime was. But also, Drag, when Luke first comes in, it takes him a long time to give him a nickname, and he calls him, War Hero Luke or whatever, but he'll call him by his actual name. He's the only prisoner who does that to. He calls him by his real name. So I think that, at least I interpreted it as he was immediately kind of threatened by Luke. Like, what do you think?
Yeah, I can see definitely like immediately threatened, but also I think it was like a respect thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like he came in and he immediately challenged him, and I
Mm-hmm.
think Drag respected that, but also felt threatened and also didn't like that. But I think for the most part he just had some respect for him, but he's not going to show the respect till Luke earned it.
Right. So where do you think that he really earned the respect? Like, where do you think that was kind of solidified?
Probably when he got his ass beat.
Yeah, you think that was it? Because I agree with you. I think it's when he got his ass beat, but I think a lot of people would interpret it, it's when he won the hand in poker, when he got the nickname Cool Hand Luke, that like permanently solidified him. But I think even before that, I think the only reason why, because Drag was walking behind Gambler when he was, they were raise a dollar, and then he was like, "Oh no, he's got nothing. Keep it up with him." And then when he finally said, "No, you got to fold," he's obviously got a full hand or whatever, and he folds, and then he ends up having a junk hand, thus getting Cool Hand Luke, having a cool hand when you have nothing. I think the only reason why he told him to fold was because he had that respect for Luke that he solidified with the fight,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that. I'm also not too savvy about poker, so I was kind of lost in that whole scene when they're raising. And I've played blackjack a couple times. I've never really played what they play in 5-card draw.
Something like that, because it wasn't straight. I only really know how to play Texas Hold'em, but I guess the idea really is more so that he
can keep that poker face.
Yeah, he had that cool hand. He had that smile. At the very end when Drag's in a somewhat homoerotic way. I want to talk about that, whether or not Drag was somewhat sexually attracted to Luke, but
How do you get a man crush on him?
yeah, big time.
Who doesn't have a man crush on someone?
Especially Paul Newman, man. Those fucking piercing blue eyes.
Shit will cut down to your soul.
Oh man. So we kind of jumped ahead there, but I wanted to talk about a boss car or I don't know if he was exactly boxcar, but he was the dude, the orderly or whatever in their sleeping quarters who had the speech at the beginning when he was like, I actually have the whole thing typed out here. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it was awesome. He says, them clothes got laundry numbers on them. You remember your numbers and you always wear the one that has your number. Any man forgets his number, spends the night in the box. These here spoons you keep with you. Any man loses a spoon, spends the night in the box. There's no playing grab ass or fighting in the building. You got a grudge against another man, you fight him on Saturday afternoon. Any man playing grab ass or fighting in the building spends the night in the box. And I think that really sets up, later the fighting in the Saturday afternoon. I think that's a really awesome, subtle way that, again, we were talking about with the director, the directorial vision versus the screenplay, and people say that this is really carried by the screenplay, but I think that was something strictly from the director of making that intentional choice of putting that in earlier in the film to be able to bring up later.
Yeah, that and the box. As soon as he mentioned the box, like, all right, we're gonna see the box. Someone's gonna most likely Kalin. Luke's gonna be in the box.
Right.
That should look miserable too.
Dude, I know, right? Like, because you didn't know what the box was, so that really it's scary. Like, I immediately thought of Django Unchained.
Yeah.
You know? Oh man, that one was even worse though. Like,
Yeah, I think cooking that was it Mississippi sun in the summer, just in a metal box on the ground. Oh,
it's fucking gross, dude.
fuck that. Throwing the water on her and then like, it immediately just like turns to vapor because it's so hot.
Yeah, and it steams him in there. And so this was even a more. I guess if I had seen the movies in reverse order, it would seem like an escalation. But this box almost seemed like a de-escalation to me. I was like, oh man, all they got to do is just stand in there, you know. But no, it was definitely horrible. I'm not trying to downplay it.
I mean, you couldn't even really sleep. It was about like 3 by 3 foot. Give you a bucket to shit in.
Yeah.
You got to keep it there with you too.
Ugh. Yeah, because the first time Luke spends the night in the box, I believe, is after his mother dies, and they're afraid that he's going to run, so they just put him in the box. He didn't even do anything wrong.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk about that later on, that part of the movie. But, yeah, he didn't even do anything wrong. It was just a flight risk.
Yeah.
Which,
Well, you just want to talk about it now? We can always go back and talk about some other shit later.
yeah, we're talking about the whole authoritarian thing and that one guard is putting him in the jail or putting him in the box. You know, sorry, I'm just doing my job. And I forget, Luke says something to him like doesn't make it right. I think he says.
Yeah, I have the exact quote here. Fuck. Well, I guess I don't have the exact quote here. But yeah, what he essentially says is, sorry, Luke, I'm just doing my job. And he says, just saying it's your job don't make it right.
Yeah.
Which I think that line, right when I heard that, I wrote it down in my notebook and was like, that's the fucking thesis of this movie right here. Which I think lends credibility to the idea that Luke is a highly principled person, that it's not about the law on the books or doing your job or whatever. It's like right and wrong, and he has a distinct sense of what's right. Which I think it's important to remember that this movie came out in 67, 68, and so that was right near the tail end of the Vietnam War, and people were getting the popular consensus was everybody was sick as fuck of the Vietnam War, and there was a very clear. I mean, the 60s were known for its divisiveness and kind of social upheaval, revolving around people being sick of this war that seemingly was going on forever and was killing all these young men. So I don't know. Did you have any thoughts of that? How the Vietnam War sort of relates to this movie? Yeah, that's it. Calling it a job don't make it right, boss. And that, like, I think that behind what we have here is a failure to communicate is the two most clear thesis of this movie.
Well, shit. I think everyone knows that speech, even if they haven't seen the movie.
Right.
I mean, just from the Guns N' Roses song or just people quoting it in pop culture or whatever.
Yeah.
Shit, I used to be able to recite the whole speech just because I used to like Guns N' Roses a lot. And
Oh,
I
really?
like the Civil War song. So.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So another like again after Carr has the speech where he alludes to the box and he alludes to the fighting people on Saturday. Right after that, there's a shot of the bloodhounds. So you know too. You're like, oh shit, those bloodhounds are gonna come back. And only in after you see what happens with Luke escaping and the dogs chasing after him, do you really kind of pick up on all of those little subtle kind of foreshadowing things. But like that's one of the things that I think the director did an awesome fucking job of foreshadowing all these different events. Um,
And back to that speech when he says, back to the authoritarian thing and the
mhm.
prison. They give him a number, which kind of strips away your humanity. You don't become,
Mhm.
who you are anymore. You're just a number now, and that's kind of correlates with the nicknames, is them kind of regaining a little sense of identity.
Yeah. Oh man, I didn't think about that. Is that they all have those nicknames that, and I think it's important to note too that they could easily just be calling each other by their real names, but they come up with nicknames, and like you said, regaining kind of an identity for themselves. They're making their identity.
It's also kind of just also giving them a sense of camaraderie. I mean, nicknames. I have my friends who have nicknames. Like I call them by their nicknames. It's I don't do that with everybody. It's a kind of a friendship
Right.
thing. You do it with like your close friends.
Hmm.
Have little nicknames for people.
And if you call somebody that you just meet by a nickname, it's fucking weird. Like
Yeah.
that's a taboo almost. It's like you're like, what the fuck? You don't fucking call me that. Like,
No, no, you don't have that privilege yet.
right? Yeah, you got to earn it essentially. And with the nickname thing too, one thing I noticed is that all the bosses they'll go by Boss Godfrey or Boss, whatever. But they all are called boss too, which is sort of the stripping of their own identity, as well as the prisoners. They kind of reformulate their identity, and they don't want to be associated almost with their. They want to be boss, like they're a figure to these prisoners, not another human.
Yeah.
Like I think with prison, especially just in real life, it's about stripping people's identities and making them less of a human, like dehumanizing almost to a point to make it easier to control people, because it's a lot easier to control prisoner 35 than it is to control Dragline or whatever the fuck his real name was. I don't think they ever tell us what any of the other prisoners' real names are, do they?
I don't think maybe when we first get introduced to the prison and I think when they're lined up and the guy goes up, the warden goes up to each one
Oh
and talks to
yeah.
them and says like I think he says what they did.
Uh-huh.
I think but it's only those four that he comes in with. And I also thought the guys he came in with would be his main posse and his crowd, but
Uh-huh.
turned out to be drag.
Yeah.
I thought his character turned out way different than I expected when we first meet him. I thought he was kind of like a hardened badass who like runs a prison and like kind of takes Luke under his wing, but no, he turns out to be one of Luke's lackeys at the end, kind of like a groupie almost. He's got like
Yeah, that's the best way to describe him, as a groupie. I was trying to figure out, because he's not like his servant. Like Luke doesn't boss him around necessarily, but Drag is like a group. Like he's just willing to do anything for him because he looks up to Luke like this godlike character. Which in the beginning, yeah, his character arc is just so fucking fascinating. Like being the big badass, like the biggest dude in the prison who beats the shit out of Luke in that first boxing match.
who gives you the nickname because you're not made till he gives you a nickname.
Right. Yeah, you're not no one until Drag gives you a nickname. And or he's like, yeah, my name's Lucas. No, it's not. You're not anybody until Drag gives you a name. And he just laughs at him. Like Lucas is just so blasé about it. He just is always blowing him off right in the beginning, like laughing at him when he's trying to be a hard ass and coming up with nicknames and shit. Like, oh my gosh. But yeah, and then near the very end, if you contrast that to one of the very last scenes where they're hiding the car and whatnot, it's like, oh, Luke, baby, you really had him fooled. It's like almost like,
He's fawning over him.
yeah, he loves Luke, like, which he definitely had a man crush on him. I don't think they tried to allude to anything like as serious or like sexual or anything. I think that's too far of a jump, but it is funny like how much like he just wants to be his best friend. Like, I'm his number one. He's like, he's my boy, he's my baby right here. Like, yeah. So after the boxing scene is just fucking grueling. Because again, I wanted this. My mom told me it was going to be a Western, so I thought in traditional, classic Western anti-hero, like at some point they become a badass. But really throughout this entire film, Luke is constantly beat down and fucking crushed until he's eventually dead. But I think that's kind of the point, is that he's still sort of the winner in the end, even though he gets the tar fucking kicked out of him constantly throughout that movie.
I think he wins just due to sheer will to keep going. Nothing, no physical prowess or intellect, just pure will. That's how he goes through shit.
Yeah. I think this
Stubbornness.
right, stubbornness and like pure, yeah, unflappable kind of, he's impossible to break down.
And then back to that boxing scene, I was expecting, I kept waiting for him just to stand up and then, one punch knock him out.
Yeah,
Kinda like
me
in,
too.
that movie Snatch. Have you seen that one?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, it's like, well, it's a little Irish boxer. It's like,
Oh, no, I have seen that movie. Yeah, dude, I fucking love that movie. We should do an episode on that,
it's a
actually.
hell of a film. But yeah, I was expecting, because I thought that's when he got his nickname Cool Hand Luke, because he would stand up and just, one shot knockout, and I was like, oh, that's what gets his name Cool Hand Luke. But no, he just got the shit kicked out of him.
Right. I thought he
An
was going to...
uncomfortable amount of time.
Yeah, like just... Right. And eventually, I think it's important to note that it's kind of representative of how Luke is through the entire film, is that he's constantly getting knocked down. Everybody tells him, Luke, stay down, you're going to die. Like, Drag will kill you. And in the very end, it's Drag who walks out of the ring first, and Luke is still there standing. So technically, he won the fight, even though he obviously didn't win the fight. But, like, technically, Drag was the first one to go out. I mean, nobody saw it that way, and that's not the point of it. But I think it's representative of the fact that Luke just never gives up, and just through sheer will, like you said, I think one of the main ideas of this film is that the will and kind of the idea of the thing and the principle of it can't ever be beaten by pure physical beatdown and power. Like the mighty doesn't beat the sort of the idea, the will, the concept. The pen is more powerful than the sword kind of idea.
Yeah, I can see that. But yeah, I mean, but does Luke eventually break when they have him dig the hole,
Right.
fill back in?
Because I think he does, and I think that's one of the nuances to the character, is that while overall he gets it back and he eventually escapes and whatnot, which he claims to be a purely impulsive decision, which contradicts what actually happened, because he stole all the keys to the other truck. Like, this seemed somewhat well thought out. It wasn't purely him just driving in the truck in some moment. I'm getting a little bit off topic. I think he is broken when they're making him dig the hole and then fill it back in, and then he wraps around one of the boss's feet and is like, please just don't hit me anymore. I think he really did break during that time.
I think he did too.
Which I think it's important to have the idea that, I guess, kind of going back to the theme that I was talking about before, about the kind of the will being stronger than purely being beaten down. Like, the idea can win out over that even though he did briefly get beat and briefly get knocked down, he always got back up in that fight, right? So I think that's kind of it, is that they did break him. They broke him as a man. He was their bitch running around. Yeah, get water. Oh, man, this is a big snapping turtle, boss. Like, he's such a bitch, dude. I was so upset when that was happening.
Yeah, that part's hard to watch. Like, oh, come on. Like, you're, like, looking up this guy. But
I
think that's what they wanted to make you feel. And you did kind of feel bad. Like, I felt bad. At least I was like, damn, like, now he's a little bitch. Like, I don't think he's that cool of a character anymore. But, also, like, what they put him through. And exactly, that's like how the prisoners felt, too. And, as soon as they see him break, they lost all respect for him.
Mm-hmm.
And but none of them had to do what he had to do, and none of them like rebelled as much, and they stopped looking up to him. They stopped helping him out once he actually broke.
Yeah.
Which that's probably when he needed the most help, was after he broke.
Well, I think after he broke, well, you're right, except for that one time. Remember, they're getting the rice off his plate and they're helping him out.
But I thought that was before he broke. That's what.
Oh yeah, you're right. That is before he broke. He was getting the shit kicked out of him. And he was getting drug in, and they were putting him in the box and making him dig holes and shit. But you're right. That was before he really broke.
And they made him eat. Like, you have to eat all your food, and they just.
Or else you get another night in the box. So they all went around and took big spoonfuls and helped him out. Yeah, you're right. Okay, so that really does changed kind of the interpretation of when he broke. And you're right, they stopped helping him out because they stopped looking up to him as this kind of Christ-like figure, which we haven't really gone too far into the Christ imagery of this, but one of the best sequences of the film, other than the car wash scene, obviously, one of the most iconic parts, which I think that kind of, it's a scene that could have been taken out of the movie. Like, it doesn't really necessarily go towards any of the higher themes in the movie, but I think that led it to be one of the bigger box office successes because during the 60s, it's really hard to have a film that's purely based upon brutalization, masochism, and sadism. And this dude just Paul Newman getting the shit kicked out of him for 2 hours would be hard for people to watch. I think it's important to have that kind of lighthearted scene with
It's a
all
little
these
bit of sex appeal.
yeah, sex appeal, and like it's funny watching these horny prisoners like all jacked up and oh my Lucille. Yeah, how do you know her name? Like, oh, look at her, she's definitely a Lucille. Like,
Praying for the buttons to pop.
yeah. That clothesline is the safety pin is so close. Just one more button to pop. Yeah, like that. Without that lighthearted scene, it wouldn't have been a box office success, and it wouldn't have been nearly as fun to watch. Because as fun as it is to hear what we have here is a failure to communicate and all these iconic lines and these monologues, it would not nearly have been as much fun if it didn't have at least one lighthearted scene. Like,
It needs something just to kind of lighten the mood, a little palate cleanser maybe.
right, that's exactly what it was. Because it did come like 45 minutes, an hour into it, like well into the second act, but it was a definite palate cleanser of watching, and it prepared you for the rest of the movie with Paul Newman getting his fucking shit rocked. So yeah, Cool Hand Luke, as we talked about earlier, is the nickname that originally is derived from him winning the hand in poker. So he essentially, because I guess, like you said, you're a little bit confused because you don't play poker that much, but just to clarify for everybody listening, it's that he had a complete junk hand, nothing, not even two of a kind or anything, and he kept raising a dollar, bet basically all of his money, and cleaned out all these motherfuckers just by having that smile and that sort of cool, calm, collected, which, like you said, like I thought he was going to be Cool Hand Luke from getting one knock punch. I thought, because my mom told me this was going to be a Western, that it was going to be like he's cool hand, like
Quick hand.
right, like a quick hand draw sort of thing, never misses kind of thing. But no, it's because he's this stoic figure that has this unflappable kind of poker face.
Really, really stoic. Doesn't show. Or I guess doesn't show his hand, which that's a poker reference.
Right. Which I think that goes really throughout the entire film. That's the most direct way they show it, but he has nothing throughout the entire film. He doesn't, when he escapes, like he said, he doesn't really have a plan. He gets caught at an intersection because he stole a car. Second time he gets caught because somebody recognized him or something. You know, it's like he gets caught all sporadically, but these prisoners think, oh, he's got a hand. He has something up, you know, he's got a card up his sleeve.
Yeah, he's betting everything he has with nothing to back it up.
Right.
He's running away. He's betting everything he's got. He's got no plan. He's got no cards.
Yeah. He's got Cool Hand Luke, though. He has that smile. That's really his smile, his unshakability that gets him through life, really. So the visitation scene with Arletta, his mother, that is, I just want to point out, it's like a beautifully shot scene, and you can tell that the way that they talk to each other is very intimate, and that they've had this very sort of frank relationship their entire life. Like, he's always been kind of fucking up, and she's always still loved. It's very clear that she loves him to death. She's just very sort of
Loves him
disappointed.
more than his brother.
Yeah, loves him more than his brother. And I think it's important to note, just like from the cinematography side, that when she's sitting in the truck, she's in sort of the lower right-hand part of the screen. He's in the upper left-hand part of the screen, which kind of shows their distance, but also kind of their intimacy with one another. Being in this covered sort of car because she's sick, it's an intimate kind of feel, but you can feel their distance, that she's disappointed that he didn't end up being more. They're not hugging and touching each other because they can't. They're physically being separated by... The warden doesn't let him walk around to the other side where they could, you know, touch and whatnot, but they're physically being separated, and I think that shows their distance.
And they always talk to each other like friends talk, not even like a mother-son relationship. It felt more of like two friends, and
Right.
that's that's what I got. That's like the feeling I got from their interaction.
Uh-huh.
Like two long friends, long-term friends who just having a talk, and I didn't really get like a mother-son loving vibe, but I feel like they love each other in a
Right.
different way.
Yeah, like a respect and yeah, like they're friends, like they're peers with one another rather than I'm disappointed in you and him kind of lying to her because obviously he's always kind of had these fuck ups throughout his entire life. She's been struggling with this because she has that line which is really beautiful, and I just love the writing in this film. Is I wish people were more like dogs because there's a certain point where the bitch don't recognize her pups anymore. She doesn't have any hopes for them. She doesn't have any disappointments. So you just feel from that like in this kind of light-hearted, awesome metaphor. Not light-hearted, but this metaphor that she is just so, disappointed and saddened by the route that her son has gone in life that she wishes that the pain could just be taken away.
She wishes that she could stop giving a fuck, but she can't.
Right.
And she wishes that she could have just given up and
Mm-hmm.
not love him as much as she does, but she can't help it.
Yeah.
And it pains her just to see him
Mm-hmm.
in the situations that he puts himself in.
Yeah, and he's visibly uncomfortable in that scene. Like he's like, "Come on, Arlette," and he calls her Arletta. He doesn't call her mom, which is another thing that leads to the less of a mother-son and more of a friend kind of peerage. But yeah, that's like one of the more heartbreaking scenes that I really loved. But it's really fucking sad, and it sets up later on when she dies and his emotional reaction to that. Which, so after that scene, they go into the road tarring scene, which was good. Where they're tarring the road, they're throwing the sand, which again, like I love the shots where they're throwing the sand onto the camera and it covers it up, and it's like these rapid, quick shots of them all kind of coming together. And in the beginning, Luke's busting ass and Drag's like, "Come on, man, what are you doing that for? Like, you're gonna be tired. We're not gonna be able to get this done. You're gonna pass out or whatever." And he's like, "They want it done fast. We're gonna fucking give it to them fast." It's like he's rebelling by doing what they say almost. Like and they end up getting the entire project done with 2 hours left in the day. So they kind of win. They get this little bonus, and the bosses are fucking pissed. They're like, "Damn it! Like we wanted them to be doing this shitty fucking backbreaking labor all day. They got it done early." Like,
Yeah, it definitely shows that they're working them not to do the job. They're working to like demoralize them and keep them exhausted.
yeah,
At the camp.
absolutely.
But yeah, what I always wondered about this movie is, does Luke do this stuff for the prisoners? Like, does he do it for them, or does he do it just to entertain himself?
I think it's more so he's doing it to entertain himself. Like, I definitely believe he's a man of principle and whatnot, but I think he also has elements to him that flash up of, like you said, this nihilistic personality that just kind of does things for the fuck of it.
Yeah, and I think he mostly just does stuff to entertain himself. And that's in I forget like what part it was, but he tells him like, "Why are you looking up to me?" Like, he said
Mhm.
one he's like, "Don't look at me," like to escape when he sends a picture back.
Yeah, this is when he gets captured from the second escape.
Yeah, I think I think he just does stuff to entertain himself, and people just kind of get wrapped up in it and like look up to him, and he doesn't want that. I think he just wants to do his own thing.
Yeah. He's
Very
like
self-centered. I think he's a very self-centered person.
right, which is so ironic that he ends up being this essentially like the leader kind of people following him and fawning over him, and Drag being his groupie and whatnot, whereas he's like, just fucking stop. I just want to do whatever I want to do, and I don't want to have a reason for it. We're going to get this road done faster because it's something to do. Like when he makes the egg bet, and he's like, "Why'd you say 50? Why could you have said 39? I thought it was something to do. Like, it'll be something to do." They're in prison just kind of, like, he's this character of immense kind of contradiction because he's purposeful and at the same time just completely random, like just doesn't give a fuck. Like,
Yeah, 50 boiled eggs.
yeah, which when I was reading some of the analysis of it, 50 eggs, there's 50 prisoners in the camp too, so it's almost like symbolic of him, like his dominance. So his not dominance, well, it is his dominance, I guess. I hate to keep flip-flopping back and forth, but his dominance over, like, he's the biggest eater in the camp. He's the hardest worker. He can withstand the most punishment from drag. Like, he wants to just be the best just 'cause it's something to do, something to pass the time. He's just pissing his life away. It's like he has no urgency to do anything with a higher meaning in his life. Like, he went to jail. He didn't try to escape when they came to collect him from cutting the heads off parking meters. He was just doing it for the fuck of it. Like, him being in jail and him being out of jail, it seems to be the same for him. He doesn't really care.
Yeah. Like, he only tried to escape just because they thought he was going to escape. And I think that's when he decided to, I'm gonna escape now.
Yeah.
They're making it worse for me. Now I'm not cool with it. Now I'm gonna escape.
Right. He's doing it more so to just be like, fuck you to them, instead of him honestly like, oh, because drag at the very end is like, oh, we're gonna go to this farm and you're gonna meet all these farm girls that we have and we're gonna have a big meal and then we're gonna do all, and he has all these future concrete plans, and Luke's like, no, we're escaping to escape and we're gonna get caught or we're gonna die or whatever. You know, he doesn't explicitly say it, but you can tell from his demeanor. He's like, no, I don't have any long-term plans for this, man. Like, we did this just, again, like all of his actions, partially for the fuck of it and partially because of principle.
And then he tells Drag kind of to go do his own thing, which I think goes back to him being like Luke's kind of like a self-centered person. I don't think he means harm by it. I think he focuses solely on himself, and he wants other people to focus solely on themselves. So I think, he's like, you go do your thing. Like, I'm gonna do me. I think Luke just likes kind of being alone in his own way.
Yeah. Yeah, because really, other than him kind of inspiring everybody to get the road work done faster, he really doesn't show any signs of leadership necessarily. He's a figure that everybody looks up to, and people walk like him and want to get his respect and whatnot because he's such an imposing figure and he's the best of the best in the whole camp. But he doesn't necessarily like, come on, man. Like, he doesn't have any rousing speeches. He doesn't try and get people to do things like as a leader would. He does them just because I'm going to get this road done faster, and then they follow him, So after the road tarring scene, now we can really get into the egg eating competition. I didn't want to eat any fucking eggs for I still can't even think about eating a hard-boiled egg after watching that sequence.
I have like one hard-boiled egg, and I can do like one a week maybe. I don't like it in general, but 50 hard-boiled eggs.
50, dude? Oh my gosh. Like, I might be able to eat like 50 sunny side up because I definitely couldn't eat 50 just from the sheer volume of it, because they said that's like 6 pounds of eggs, which is, from my research of watching Man vs. Food so many times, I know that's about the limit that the human stomach can handle, so I knew it was going to be a close one. But, man, what a suspenseful scene of, like, cutting back, and him, like, stuffing eggs in his mouth. Like, it's just so funny.
Yeah, no, that was hard to watch.
Yeah, all the eggshells around him and whatnot. Like,
they act like that was like the big like almost like the shootout scene. Like, the climactic scene was him eating all the eggs.
Yeah,
like, they made a big deal out of an egg eating competition.
Yeah, the score gets more intense, cutting back and forth. Is he gonna do it? And then, like, at the very end, he has to. Drag's getting his jaw and kind of like chewing for him, and he's like, he didn't swallow the last one. He didn't swallow the last one. I was like on the edge of my seat, like, did he swallow the last egg? Like, I was getting so caught up in this fucking stupid ass egg eating competition. But they do brilliant. I think that's another like credit towards the director for being really good at building suspense, watching a prisoner eat eggs. Like, you're rooting for Paul Newman so hard, though.
It takes some special talent, to make an egg eating competition seem suspenseful and entertaining.
Yeah, and that's also where one of the more clear symbolisms of him as a Christ-like figure, a Christ sort of redeemer figure, is when he's laying on the table, and you can even look at it and like his legs are crossed near the end, just like many depictions of the crucifix, and his arms splayed out and kind of looking dead with his belly sort of distended from all the eggs and whatnot. And
then they just leave him there.
Yeah, once he wins the bet and Drag takes all the money, everybody leaves. Which I think is, I think that's kind of going along with the symbolism of Jesus on the cross and like him getting killed and then sort of left up there. And I don't know, this is where you can weigh in, but like traditionally with the crucifixion story, is everybody kind of like waiting around with him there on the cross for days afterwards, or does everybody sort of like leave after he gets kind of killed?
Well, they take him down. 'Cause I want to say it's the Sabbath is coming up, so they can't do any work. So they wanted to, they had to take him down off the cross before their holy day, and they test if he's dead, and like a Roman spears him in the chest, and they find out he's dead. And then I think it's him. I think it's Mary Magdalene, and then John. Or they stay there with him and take him down.
Okay.
And bury him.
Okay, so see, that's different than like what the film would have portrayed. Like as if it would have been almost better had Drag like maybe picked him up, and like after he has the sort of splayed out, like Drag comes back and picks him up and like puts him in bed or something like that. Maybe. But again, who am I if I can say change this classic movie? Who am I?
I think they're going for like they're probably doing the Christ imagery, but probably more of like the general public of people they want Jesus when they want him, but when after they use him for whatever, they just leave him.
Oh, that's a really good interpretation. I didn't think about that.
Because when after he breaks and he's no longer useful to rise their spirits up and be entertainment for them, they don't want nothing to do with him. Kind of like that could be good foreshadowing for the egg scene. He entertains them, he takes their mind off being in prison for a while, but as soon as he's done, they're like, all right, move on to whatever's new.
Right. Because that really is something really shocking, kind of jarring about the scene, is how quickly everybody walks away. They're so done with it right after it's done. The people, he cleans out the entire camp, so everybody's pissed off, but Drag's not like, oh, my boy Luke, this is one of the times where he also kind of just walks away and leaves him alone. And he's sitting there about to vomit from all these fucking eggs. Like,
just everyone uses everyone.
Yeah. That's a really good interpretation, though. I didn't think about that, with people using Christ when they need him and then sort of going away from whatnot. So after the egg scene is when Luke's first escape happens, which I believe that's so he escapes. 2 prisoners try to escape, but one gets caught on the fence, and then they see Luke, like, he really bolted for it. And the way that they cover up their escape plan of, like, cutting in the floor is, like, they're all partying and hooting and hollering, and then they get the floor walker guy to read the porn out loud. Yeah. That was one of the better scenes, too. He's like, and she slowly slipped off. He's like, no, it's about to get good. Like, when he's about to turn around, like, it's about to get good here. Like, no, keep reading. He's like, she slipped off her dress, exposing her silky skin. Like, just see all these giant men like leering over him, like getting all hot and bothered. Like, I guess that's what they did before they had porn. Is just read saucy books to each other.
You gotta get your rocks off somehow.
I guess, man. You're in prison. Oh Lord. Yeah, because that was one of the weirdest scenes too. When I can't remember, but 2 of the prisoners, one of them's like reading the porn to the other guy, and he's like just sitting there like, oh yeah, like really lost in his own head. I was like, God, man, I'm so glad we live in the 21st century.
Have a nice, giant dude reading porn to you, and somehow it's getting your rocks off.
Right, that gravelly prisoner voice is what's getting you off.
That's how I listen to my stuff. On my audiobook of 50 Shades of Grey's got Samuel L. Jackson narrating it for me.
And she whipped him, motherfucker, and tied him up with bonds, motherfucker.
Speak to me, Samuel. I'll take
the hot wax. She dripped the hot wax on him, motherfucker. So back to Luke's first escape. When the dogs are chasing him, that's like one of the best montages in the entire scene, is when he's jumping over the barbed wire fence. Because he has a keen sense of, again, like he says, I never planned anything in my entire life. But he's obviously thinking about, oh man, jumping over the fence.
I think he was doing that not as much to get caught as to fuck with the guy he knows, like, he's the guy who's following him has to do all the stuff he's doing, but with a dog. Right. So I think cause he was like had like a smile on his face some of the times he was doing it. I think he was just fucking with the guy. I think he was doing it just to do it. I think this would be pretty funny.
Right, and then he goes in kind of the streams, sort of loses scent there, but then that just fucks with the dogs more and fucks with the guy, and like they're getting the dogs all tangled up, and he's like, God damn it, like what are these dogs doing? Like crossing back and forth, and I think it's notable that before they catch him, The dog boy returns, and all the prisoners look out. That was one of the more suspenseful parts too. You're like, oh shit, did they catch Luke? Is he in the car? And then they see the dog boy come out, and they're like, oh. And he goes around back, and you're like, oh shit, did they kill Luke? Is he about to get dragged out of the back? And then they pull out the dead dog, which at first I was like, damn, that fucking sucked. Like, Luke killed this dog or something. Like, I was thinking of some sort of, like that episode of Black Mirror, the metalhead one where she's getting chased by the robotic dogs. Have you seen that?
Oh yeah, that one was one of the better Black Mirrors, but not. I wouldn't watch it again just because
Yeah.
you just feel like helpless against machines with that one.
Right.
It was relentless.
But I was like, oh man, did he kill the dogs? But no, he said, poor Blue, he got run plumb to death. Like, literally, Luke's spirit and sort of will is so strong that he ran these dogs to death. Like, he outran them so hard and so relentlessly that the dogs died.
But I like how the dog caretaker or
Like the dog. I think he's just called Dog Boy.
dog boy. I like how he blames Luke for the dog's death, but he's the one who didn't stop the dog from running.
Right, because that's what I was thinking. I was like, do bloodhounds just like once they get on a scent, they either die or catch them? Like, no, I'm pretty sure they could call them off at some point.
Yeah, I mean, he was there right next to the dog, and he didn't stop the dog, so he just said he blamed Luke for it.
Right.
And he was the one that could have easily stopped it.
Yeah. Which that's exactly it. Is that like I felt bad. I was like, oh man, that's like not a good characteristic of Luke. But I was like, no, Luke didn't kill these dogs. He was just outrunning them. Like, and
Yeah. The guy could have easily stopped, gave the dog some water.
yeah, it was the dog boy's fault. Absolutely. So when he comes back, Luke returns, and the captain says to him, we're going to put these chains around your feet, and the clinking is going to remind you that they're for your own good. And then Luke says, which is consistent throughout the film of him being kind of a smart ass and then enraging them so much because they cannot break him, is him being like, Captain, I wish you wouldn't be treating me so well. And then he punches him in the fucking face and knocks him down. And that's when he delivers the famous line. What we have here is a failure to communicate. Some men just cannot be reached, and that there's a lot to unpack with that line. Sort of being representative of, he's saying what they had there is a failure to communicate, but what Luke sees isn't a failure to communicate. It's more of kind of the principle of the matter, him thinking that he's right, they're wrong. Just because it's your job, don't make it right. Whereas they're saying, like, no, this is just a miscommunication. It's kind of how I interpreted it anyway.
Yeah, it also it says, like, which is the way he wants, he gets.
Mm-hmm.
So he's kind of saying, like, oh, Luke had a choice in this matter, and, like, he chose to run, and he chose to put the shackles on him.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So, working our way through. So, quickly after that, Luke escapes for the second time, which he uses, you remember the rope trick where he ties the thread, which you see him before, like, wrapping it around his finger, and you're like, oh, shit, he's got some sort of plan. Like,
I thought he was just playing with twine. I didn't even think that was going to be used later in the film.
oh, yeah. And then he runs behind the bush and, like, you better keep shaking that bush. And then he keeps shaking it and shoots at him, and you're like, oh, fuck, did he kill Luke or whatever? And then you see the lion all running away. You're like, got him again. Like, that motherfucking Luke. Love him. But again, like he says, I never planned anything in my entire life. He had to plan a little bit if he were going to use the twine to shake the bush. And, like, he has these really elegant, like, they're elegantly simple, but they're still plans nonetheless.
Well, he's a contradiction.
Uh-huh.
And then he uses the paprika, chili powder, and all that to
Right.
mess with the dogs. I think the director really did not like bloodhounds. I mean,
Right? He was fucking
had
up.
one die, then had two of them get, pretty much pepper sprayed.
Yeah, they sneezing and shit. Yeah, I wonder how they got the dogs to do that in the film, because this is in the 60s, so they didn't care as much about, like, animal welfare and whatnot.
No, they probably put some stuff in the dogs' noses to make them sneeze.
Yeah.
I mean, shit, I'm pretty sure that in To Kill a Mockingbird, they shot a real dog.
Really?
Yeah, that might just be an urban legend, but that's what I heard.
Shit, I wouldn't be surprised, because that's even older. That's like 40s or 50s, right?
I'm not I know it's black and white, so probably like 50s, early 60s, late 50s maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, that'd be fucking bad. But I wouldn't be surprised at all. Um, so that's when he sends the picture. The second time he escapes, he sends the picture back in the magazine of Luke, and they're all Drag is like the keeper of it, and they're all like, "I'll give you a cold Coke for just a glimpse at it," and they're all like passing around like it's some porn, like they're getting all hot and bothered again by the women that Luke's with. But it's more so that they're fantasizing about this free, awesome life that he has.
They say like kind of escape, like damn, like if Luke can do it, I can do it, but none of them have the will to go out and actually escape.
Right. Like keeping it purely in the realm of fantasy. I think that really is getting them through it, is fantasizing about being free one day. So that's when all of his friends help him eat the food off his plate, is when he gets returned after that. And they beat him within an inch of his life, is what they say. Like, which I don't really get, because he was laying on the thing. Again, he was laying on the table, similar to a Christ-like figure. That was the second sort of Christ imagery that they have. Him laying on the table, and after being beat half to death, and that's when he snaps. He sort of gets up. He gets up, which I thought all of his bones would be broken and shit, but no, he gets up. He's like, "Stop feeding off of me. Go out there and see it for yourself." And he's like fed up with it completely. He doesn't want to be this figure, which I think makes him kind of the perfect anti-hero. Which I'll read an excerpt from Ebert's review, and he argues that he's actually more just a straight hero rather than an anti-hero. But yeah. So, but then you're right. After his friends eat him, help him eat off his plate, they're helping him through this whole thing. He's forced to dig the grave, which is when, or I say grave because it's a plot that I thought maybe they were going to kill Luke then, is because he kept digging the hole, and they're like, "What is this dirt doing out in this yard? Put it back in the hole. Put it in the hole. What's all this dirt doing in Boss's hole? Get it out of the hole." And then back and forth endlessly. And man, Paul Newman's just representation there of him just like sluggishly, like
It's broken.
absolutely broken. Which is really fucking tough to watch. Like, it really is. Like you really get the sense that the bosses are sadists. Like, they're really mean. Like, they're getting pleasure out of punishing him. It's not just their job. Like, that one boss said, "I'm sorry, Luke, I'm just doing my job," and he seems to have somewhat of a conscience. Feels kind of bad for it. But the rest, like Boss Godfrey, the one with the glasses,
Yeah.
he has no fucking feeling. Which I think is why they don't show his eyes. Which is why they call him the man with no eyes. And also, he doesn't speak throughout the entire film. He's like this perfect villain, this imposing figure standing over him with this gun, who's constantly shooting things. And you can tell he's a deadeye, too, which really sets up later why he's able to hit Luke from so far away.
Yeah, he reminded me a lot of the sheriff from, what's it? Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Oh, yeah.
Because they have him have the sheriff has like the glasses on, and they meet it's that blues singer who said he sold his soul to the devil. He said
Yeah.
the guy he wore black glasses,
Uh-huh.
and then so that could be a reference to Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, or Cool Hand Luke.
Yeah, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou being a reference to Cool Hand Luke.
Referencing like that character.
Right.
Cause it's reminded me a lot of that character.
Yeah.
Like, doesn't say anything really, and just got those glasses with the sides on them.
Yeah, so you can't even see him from the sides, which I think, because a lot of times, obviously that trope or cliche or whatever, like eyes are the windows to the soul or whatever, but I think it does lead a lot to, that's the personalization factor of people, is looking into someone's eyes. It's when you're making a conversation with somebody, you look them in the eyes, and you're trying to connect with somebody, it's the eyes that personalize and humanize a person. So I think he's always wearing shades, even in nighttime. Like, in the final scene where he shoots Luke, he's wearing the fucking glasses. When he's out in the yard, wearing glasses, always wearing glasses. So it makes him this sort of perfect kind of Frankenstein, Jason, Michael Myers kind of silent, imposing figure that is always there and ever present.
This is whole characterization, he's the villain.
Right.
Just simple, like, cut and dry, bad guy.
Right. Yeah, there's no redeeming factor. There's no nuance to him. There's nothing. There's no shot of him playing with a kitten and making you like him. You know, he's a strict villain.
Like even the warden, like at first, like you wanted to like him because he seemed like a reasonable guy and had some like redeeming factors. But
Uh
even
huh.
even he had a little bit of characterization. But yeah, the I guess the head boss. I don't know what to call him.
Like Captain, I think was his name. He was the only
Yeah,
one that didn't call boss. Like he was Captain, but then all the other ones were boss this, boss that. I just know the guy with the glasses was Boss Godfrey, and he seems to be like kind of the head of all the other bosses. Oh, and something I wanted to point out when he makes his first escape attempt, Luke or one of the bosses or Drag says to him, "Yeah, your time's almost up here soon." So he escapes with very little time left. So a reasonable person that would be kind of rationally thinking about things and not be strictly doing it just to say fuck you to the guards would be like, no, I'm going to wait this out. And like that would be overall better for him. But Luke is willing to go through such lengths to get himself killed, basically, to say fuck you to these guards and to not be broken down. Like it's more important to him to be an independent person and not be beholden to somebody else than it is to reasonably just wait it out and be out of this prison. You know, I think that's important. I think that line was really carefully placed to say, yeah, your time's almost up here, Luke.
yeah. Luke's definitely not a reasonable person. I mean, who the
Definitely
fuck?
not.
Who eats 50 eggs? That's not a reasonable thing to do.
Not at all. That's crazy shit, dude. 50 eggs. That's so gross. I couldn't even. My dad was cooking hard-boiled eggs yesterday, and I almost vomited looking at him. I was like, Dad, I just watched Cool Hand Luke, and like, I'm gonna really need you to not offer me any of this. So,
I think he escaped because I think he was getting bored. I think that's one of the big things that drives him is he's bored
yeah,
a lot of the time. He just wants to do something that's going to be like makes him feel alive.
right.
Because he was in a war, correct? Like he was a soldier.
Right. That was another thing that I think relates back to the Vietnam, because this takes place in 48. So he was a World War II veteran, which he started out as a private and then got all these accolades and whatnot. And they don't explain why, but he eventually gets demoted back to a private. And he says, yep, I came out the same way I came in. Basically was just killing time. Like that's kind of his entire thing is killing time, something to fill the time. Is that he escapes, like he explains, for everything else, it was something to do. You know, it's that he obviously was probably insubordinate or something in the war.
He's probably doing exactly what he was doing in the prison, just saying like "fuck you,"
Right.
like just not following orders, not just because it's a job doesn't make it right. Kind of.
Right.
I mean, he could have gotten some orders to kill civilians or something. Who knows?
Who knows? Right. And but I think you're exactly right. Like he would be exactly like he was in the prison, being insubordinate and saying "fuck you." But I bet he was the best soldier too, because just like everything else, he eats the most, he works the hardest, he does all these things. Like he has all this talent that got him raised up so high in the ranks. But it's his principles and being an insubordinate asshole and just kind of something to do, doing things for the fuck of it, that got him demoted back to that.
Yeah, because he's probably like you said, he's just something to do. Doesn't really think things out. I'm sure on the battlefield he was just that's an objective. That's something to do. I'm gonna go do it. Like you can kind of tell he doesn't really care about getting shot at. I mean, he was pretty, stayed pretty cool when he was shooting at him when he was pulling the string on the tree.
Yeah.
And when he was driving away with the truck. I mean, he wasn't freaking out. Like if I was getting shot at, I'd probably be curled up in a ball.
Yeah, ducking down and freaking the fuck out. And he also says that line, I think is so important, came out the same way I came in. I think it's the exact same way he looks at jail. Like he's calling out bullshit on saying it's a rehabilitative kind of thing, that he's going to be fixed by this prison. He's saying, no, I'm going to come out the same exact way I came in. Like he is a whole person. Like he has a conception of who he is, and that's not going to be changed by these prison officials.
No one's gonna change him.
Right.
So I'm pretty sure his mom said something similar on his lines. Like you've always been this way.
Mm-hmm. Right. He's not a dynamic character in any sense. Like he doesn't have a character progression. He comes out the same way he came in.
He is who he is.
Yeah. He's a strong, like he's kind of just a human embodiment of like this nihilistic but principled thing,
Yeah.
Sue.
He's pretty punk rock.
Yeah, pretty fucking punk. Uh, so that's getting to the end. Kind of here is when he steals the boss's truck near the very end after he catches the snapping turtle. And they're like, "Go cook it up for us, Luke. Go cut it up." And he's almost like the new water boy. Like he gets special privileges and shit because he sucks up. And then he steals the boss's truck and runs away, and they try and shoot him then. And then you see Drag jumping on the side and crawling into the truck. So he has Buddy this time. It's the first time he's ever escaped successfully with somebody else. And Drag's with him. And as I talked about earlier, Drag has all this idealism. We're going to go back to my farm. They're going to be these girls. We're going to eat food. We're going to have all these things to do. And you can tell Luke, no, man, I'm going my own way. We're going to separate. I don't want any of that. You got to do your own thing. Tells him to go away. So, very end, as we've talked about, his characterization before is that he has no God. He has no fear of anybody else. And there's that important scene where it starts raining, and everybody's like, Luke, get in here. It's lightning and thundering. You know, you're going to get killed. And he says, please, God, strike me down. I want to know that you exist. I want there to be something there. Just do it. And then nothing happens. He says, yeah, that's what I thought. Like, he obviously has no reverence for even a God until the very end when he's in the church, when he runs into the church and he starts praying. He says, I know I haven't been very good, but come on, I got dealt a shit hand, which is going back to the whole poker theme and cool hand Luke. Like, he was dealt a shit hand in life, but
He made the best out of it.
yeah, by bluffing, by constantly raising the stakes and betting on himself, even though he has nothing. And then he finally, and I think representative of that is that he's like, please, come on, give me some sort of help. And then Drag walks in and he says, really, this is what you get for me? Like, this is my fucking help? Like, which is, again, being dealt a shit hand. Drag, who is illiterate, like they say that he has to have all of his letters read to him and whatnot. He can't even read Georgia. He's like, where's this from? This is from Atlanta, Georgia. He's like, oh, that must be my uncle. Like, he can't even read fucking Atlanta, Georgia. Like, he's a complete imbecile, and again follows Luke around as this big sort of brute, but not a lot of intelligence to him. And I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but he sort of, if we're going with the Christ imagery, Luke being Christ and trying to be called out by the cops who have him all surrounded, who are sort of like the Roman centurions, and him being Drag being like the Judas figure and trying to deliver him to the police, which is a little bit different because Drag seemingly has good intention and is like, they're going to even let us keep our same bunks, and if we come out peaceful, we won't even be beat. Like, he's being completely naive, and Luke knowing for the fact, like, oh yeah, really, they're not going to beat us? This is the third time I've escaped. They said they're going to kill me last time, and I bet they will kill me. So he knows better, whereas, I don't know, I guess you can fill in here with the Judas figure. Judas did it, like, for gold or silver pieces or something, right?
Yeah, and he didn't think Jesus would get killed. Like, when he found out they were going to crucify him, like, the guilt made him kill himself.
Oh, okay.
So he thought he was going to get arrested, maybe put in jail or something. I used to know this really well, but it's been a while since since Catholic high school. But he did not intend for Jesus to get killed, and he even went and tried to bargain. Like, try to give the silver back. It was 40 pieces of silver. He tried to give the silver back to the high-ranking Jewish religious leaders, and they said no. And
wow.
Some gospel interpretations have him throwing the money back at him. The gospels vary on their interpretation of Judas, but yeah, the guilt definitely drove him to suicide, and in some verses they have he bought a piece of land and then he killed himself on the land.
Oh, okay.
And other people, just different, but yeah.
So it's a little bit different, but it does have that same thing of he didn't intend for him to get killed. The same way Drag honestly was like, Luke, let's just give up peaceful life and we can go back to our nice life at the prison, together. And it is sort of like a folksy kind of romantic feel. Like, at a certain point I was kind of like, oh man, I kind of want to be in prison playing poker with these guys and drinking pops and, sort of having this kind of rednecky prison feel. Obviously not really, but it does sort of have this
Reminds
nice
you a little bit of-
romantic quality to it.
Reminds you a little bit of like summer camp.
Yeah,
You're in a
yeah.
you're in a cabin with bunkmates and y'all are messing around, playing
Uh-huh.
poker, looking at nudie mags and all that.
Yeah, exactly. It really is.
Having your bunkmate read, or having your camp counselor read porn to you while you sneak out.
But you were the only one in the cabin at the time, right? When he did that, everybody else was gone.
Yeah. Yeah, and we drank some Jesus juice, and yeah. And then
Is that like soda pop? Was that like the Coke?
that was the blood of Christ. It's Jesus juice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh shit.
And yeah, me and Father Kirby just really had a good
Father
time.
Kirby, man, I've heard lots of stories about Father Kirby.
Yeah.
So Luke sticks his head out and says, and he even does an impression of the captain too. What we have here is a failure to communicate, and then instantly is shot. And the way that Ebert pointed this out in his review, but Drag kind of revises the history a little bit of the story of when he was shot, and he says even when he was shot, he was smiling. But Luke, when he actually gets shot, has a look like, what the fuck? Like I got shot. Like then he smiles afterwards, but he definitely for a second is like, the fuck?
Damn,
like
they actually shot me. I didn't think they were actually gonna shoot me.
yeah, like
That's what
he's
I
got
got.
a good aim, or you know.
I got the interpretation of it. It's like when that it's like someone like talking a lot of shit, and then he's like, yeah, how would you hit me in the face? And he actually gets hit in the face. He's like, oh shit, like you actually hit me in
Yeah.
the face. Like these actions have consequences.
Right. So that's him kind of being like, oh, it was something to do, sort of his blasé manner about going, and cavalier about going about things. But Drag wants to look at him like a Christ figure, where he said, even towards the end, where he does smile at the end when he's in the car. So it's not completely a fabrication, but Drag definitely trumps up and bends details of the story to be like, he was smiling the whole time, that classic Luke smile, no matter what he was
Exaggerates
always
a little bit.
Yeah.
Makes a better story.
Right. Makes it a better story, exaggerates, makes him a myth more than a man. And he says he was always down for a good time or whatever. And it wasn't that Luke was down for a good time. He was just bored and needed something to do and is doing things kind of randomly. So that is kind of a commentary about like myth building and him being this, you know, almost godlike, Christ-like figure.
Them putting him up on a pedestal, which he really did not want them to do.
Yeah, ironically, that was the last thing he ever wanted. He explicitly told them, don't put me up on a pedestal, do it for yourself. And then Drag immediately says, he's just tired. He got the shit beat out of him today. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
So again, he's revising his words and trying to interpret for him when he's really like, no, I don't. I'm not the person that you think I am. Don't make me out to be above you. Do it for yourself. If, you know, this is what you really admire, go out there and do it yourself. So he's taken away by the captain, and one of the bosses is like, or the policeman is saying, oh, we have to get him to this hospital. I'll call him. It's late, but they'll be able to open it up. No, we're going to go to the military base or the prison or whatever. That's over an hour away. He's definitely going to die. I make the decisions here. And then he drives away, which we talked about the stoplight theme earlier and the traffic violation. And in the background of that, you'll see the stoplight, and you see it go from green to red, which I think symbolizes his death in the film.
See, if I wanted to kill the guy, I wouldn't put him in the back of my car where he bleeds all over the upholstery.
Right? Like, he
Yeah.
was bleeding out slowly.
Yeah, it's just going to make a mess. Like, throw a tarp down or something, or just shoot him twice.
Yeah, shoot him again and be like, they didn't have forensics back then. Just be like, he was resisting arrest. You didn't even have to say that. They would have been on his side.
And then you just go around to the police and hand each one a nickel, and you're like, here, don't say anything. You didn't see anything.
Yeah. Wow, this is a month's pay.
Yes, boss.
Yes, boss. Yeah, and they were kind of all characterized as sadists throughout all of it. They all wanted to kill him anyway, except for that one policeman that tried to get him to the hospital.
But going
But
back to the whole sage thing, you're talking about that one guard who, he's like, I'm just doing my job. Because I remember, like, I thought, he might be like a, ally to Luke in the film, but Luke did something to him. I think it was when he escaped the first time, and and then that guy became exactly like all the other guards, and
Right.
just, like, hated him after that too, and would beat him and shit like that.
yeah, you're totally right. I forgot about that. Is that at first he he liked Luke. Like, he was even endearing himself to the guards at a certain point. Through, again, no fault. Luke, the last thing Luke wanted to do was for the bosses to like him. Yet one of the bosses liked him up until he escaped, and then he took it personally, like, oh man, I told Luke not to escape, and I told him all this shit, and he offended me. Like, it's almost like he was like one of the groupies that got butthurt that he didn't like him back.
It's like, how dare he disobey me after I'm putting him in the box? And it's like,
Yeah.
I was nice to him. Like, how dare you disrespect me?
Right. I did him a favor. I was his buddy. How dare he do this to me?
I showed him just human decency, and Luke ought to
Yeah.
respect me and obey me now.
Right. I said sorry. How can he not love me? Like, so at the end too, the Godfrey's glasses fall on the ground during a struggle because Drag tries to fucking kill him. He's like, "You killed him!" He's really upset, and Godfrey's glasses fall on the ground. And then when they drive away, his glasses get run over. So I think that even though I think that paired with Luke's smile to the camera symbolizes his victory over them, the philosophical victory he has over them, even though they killed him. They beat him in the most physical way possible.
Exactly like the boxing match.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he might have on paper he lost, but in his way he won.
Right. Yeah, in that philosophical way, he won out. His will, his unbreakable way won out over their physicality. I don't think physicality is a word. I think that's a word that ESPN made up.
Physicality.
Physicality. His physicality.
I have great physicality.
So yeah, that was kind of the end of the movie. So I want to go over a little bit of Roger Ebert's review, where he says, "I think he's more of a willing martyr, a man so obsessed with the wrongfulness of the world that he invites death to prove himself correct." And I think because Ebert's more along the lines of, I think he's more of a straight hero than an anti-hero, because an anti-hero kind of shrugs off normal conventions of somebody heroic, which I think he does more so, but like Ebert's argument is more so that, no, he's a strict hero because he's using these deep principles to prove himself right, that he martyrs himself to be right in the end.
See, I think martyr, you have to be, you're doing it for the good of others. I think, my interpretation of the character is he's just doing what he wants to do because he's bored. I don't have the feeling he's doing it out of a sense of selflessness. I think he's doing it out of a sense of selfishness.
Yeah.
I think he's doing it because he wants to do it. I don't think he's doing it for the good of others. And I think heroes do something they don't want to do, but it's the right thing to do. I think Luke just does it because he wants to do it.
Yeah. I agree. I'm a little bit in between you guys. Like, I don't think he's doing it purely because he's bored. I think that is a lot of it, and he's extremely impulsive. But I think he does kind of have these underlying reasons, like, fuck you, I'm right, you are wrong. But ultimately, a lot of the times that he comes up and does these things are very sporadically because he's bored. And I think almost his boredom and doing things just for the fuck of it is a principle in and of itself, is that he's fulfilling that kind of idea in his head that this is the way people should be acting. You shouldn't be...
He's got his own sense of, justice, sense of right and wrong. And I forgot to mention this earlier, but back, when he gets arrested for cutting the heads off the parking meters,
Yeah.
I like to think that he parked somewhere and got a ticket.
Yeah.
Or got a boot or something. He was like, okay, I'm going to go cut the heads off all these things.
Right.
Because he says a personal disagreement or something.
Right, because I remember now, he says something along the lines of, I had a personal disagreement with somebody in the town council, which is exactly like his character, is that...
Probably goes to court trying to fight it. I was only parked there for 2 minutes grabbing a beer or something. And now you got to pay it. And he's like, all right, well, I'm going to go cut the heads off all your parking meters.
Or he knows that the cop is wrong, that he wasn't, his meter wasn't out and the cop just didn't like him or something. He felt, you're right, some sense of injustice that he had to personally victimize. And that's his sense of justice, is right and wrong, not what's legal and not legal, but fuck it, I'm going to cut these heads off the meters because that's my personal fuck you to the man. He's one of the best rebel characters ever.
Kind of rebel without a cause.
Right. So... Like I said earlier, it was immediately praised when it came out as being critically and commercially successful. And the New York Times praised the film praised the film, remarking the Pearson's sharp script, Rosenberg's ruthlessly realistic and plausible staging and direction, which, again, I thought Rosenberg did a really good job. Some critics don't think so. New York Times obviously agreed, sort of with him being an awesome director. But... He so one of the fun facts that I was looking up, because there aren't a lot of like really awesome behind the scenes. Two things. So apparently Pierce Pierce, who wrote the novel, who is the convict, on the last day of shooting, he got into a fight with one of the producers or the director or something and punched him in the face. So he was uninvited to the premiere. So he didn't even go to the premiere.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, right. Which is, I love that if Luke is truly based upon him, he is that character in real
It's
life.
definitely something he would do.
Right. It is.
Fuck, I didn't even want to go to the premiere anyway.
Yeah, fuck it. Like yeah, my personal sense of rightness is to punch you in the fucking head. Like,
It's kind of like to a less extreme extent. It's like Suge Knight. Didn't he kill someone on the set of NWA or Straight Outta Compton?
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure.
Oh yeah, he ran him over.
Yeah.
He did. Yeah. God, what a piece of work. He's in jail, I think. No, yeah, he's definitely in jail.
He killed Tupac.
I'm pretty sure that was Diddy, wasn't it?
No, I'm pretty sure Suge Knight killed Tupac.
Yeah, I think that is one of the more realistic theories.
Yeah.
I also heard one that it was kind of like rogue members, because you know the whole East Coast West Coast thing, but Biggie and Tupac didn't really take it that seriously. Like behind the scenes, they were buddies, and they definitely personally got mad at each other, but it was more so some kind of rogue member. That's why it's so random and nobody can really solve it, is that it was pretty fucking random. It was two Crips or Bloods or whatever run up and shoot him because they see him, and they took it really seriously.
Then they retaliated and got Biggie.
Yeah. We're going to have to cover that on another episode. We'll have to find some
R.I.P.
good. Yeah. So we're going to be wrapping it up sometime soon here. But oh yeah, so the second fact I wanted to tell was the Paul Newman. He insisted when the Plastic Jesus scene where he was singing Plastic Jesus after his mother died, which is ironic too. I think it's important to note that he was being characterized as an atheist throughout all this, yet when his mother dies, the first song he sings is Plastic Jesus, which I interpreted to be, this must be something really personal from his childhood. That must have been a song that his mother sang to him, and it's not doing it for the overtly religious themes of it, or because he expressly believes in a God, but because it means something really personal to him.
Also, Plastic Jesus is a term that I was taught meant people who are plastic Jesus worshippers. They sell the imagery of being Christ-like and being really Christian, but when it comes down to it, they're not Christian. They don't really follow it.
Mm-hmm.
Like people who preach the gospel, blah blah blah, and love each other, love everybody, but then they're against like gay marriage or forgive others and don't be recitful, or like gangsters who have cross tattoos and they go to church
Murder
with their
people.
moms, but then they do a drive-by shooting.
Uh-huh.
It's like plastic Christians, plastic Jesus.
Yeah.
Which could be him talking about if he's the Christ-like figure, all the people in the jail or plastic Christians. They're there when it's convenient for him and they want to feel better about themselves. They're there for him, but when he breaks or when he really needs them, and after he eats all the eggs, they just go do their own thing. Not true followers of the Church of Cool Hand Luke.
Yeah, I totally the Church of Cool Hand Luke. We should start a fan club called the Church of Cool Hand Luke.
It's not a religion. there's a religion about the dude from Big Lebowski.
Oh really? Oh, dudism.
Yeah,
I've heard of that. Yeah.
Lukeism, Cool Hand Lukeism.
Cool Hand Lukeism. We'll start it. Coming soon to A Pineapple Network. Cool Lukeism, the Church, the podcast. So, oh yeah. So the fun fact was Paul Newman insisted on learning to play guitar specifically for that scene, and he was shit throughout the entire thing, and he got into a really big argument with Rosenberg, the director, and he was like, we're just going to use somebody else for the scene. Why do you need to do this? And he got taken aside by one of the other actors who was actually teaching him how to play guitar, and they had this huge breakdown where you're screaming at each other, and they pushed that scene to the very last day of shooting, so they had to get it done. And on the very last take, he nailed it, apparently. Well, that's the take that they used, which is amazing. And then they said, print, like cut, print, done. And Newman was like, I feel like I could have done it better. And he said, nobody will ever be able to do it better than that. And I think he was just kind of fed up with taking takes. You know, he's like, all right, fuck it, we're done. Like,
No, it's
cut
perfect.
it off.
We don't need to do it again.
Yeah, Paul is fine. No, I really think I can do a good job. No, Paul, shut the fuck up. But yeah, so I think that's about it. Do you have any closing remarks that you want to talk about with this movie? Anything that we missed out on? I'm sure there's going to be plenty of things that we missed out on. It's a pretty dense movie and lots of imagery and lots of interpretations.
No, I can't think of anything right now. I'm sure I'll think of something in about 5 minutes after we wrap this up. I'll be like, oh, fuck, that's what I want to talk about.
Yeah, damn it, we missed out on this one thing. Austin, are there any notes? Because I remember on the last one, after we cut, there was something that we missed that you wanted us to talk about in the Shining one. So I want to make sure we cover all of our bases.
I will say, to clarify for the listeners, the dog is not shot in To Kill a Mockingbird. You can actually see the guy's hand. They have a string attached to his legs. They pull him off the set.
Okay,
Well, I'm glad that I'm glad I was proven wrong about that one.
Yeah. So do you have a microphone over there also? They're going to be able to hear you. Should I repeat that? Yeah, so what Awesome was just telling me there was that in To Kill a Mockingbird, they did not shoot the dog, which is good. It was just a different form of mild animal abuse of pulling the dog.
Casual animal abuse.
Yeah, it was cool back then. It's like everybody did that to the dogs, you know. It was, they pulled you can actually see the string in the shot apparently, and pulling the dog off the scene in place of it being shot. So they didn't kill it; they just drug it across, probably multiple times for multiple takes.
Just pull its hip out of place. It's all good. It's a dog.
It's okay.
Yeah. it's got 3 other legs. It doesn't need all of them.
Right. Why would?
And they can't see me, but they can hear me. But I will also ask the question: are there any thoughts on the comparison between this movie and Shawshank Redemption? Because a lot of times I've heard that Shawshank Redemption has a lot of Christ-like narratives in it, and it's also a prison movie where the main character in Shawshank Redemption is giving the people almost a relief, when he puts the record player up to the warden's mic, and it's almost showing the people of Earth there is a greater beyond this. And do you think there's in Shawshank Redemption, since that was made in 1994, that was a play on this movie, and the director thought he could elaborate or lean more into those Christ-like narratives? Or do you think it's just something about somebody seeing something beyond prison walls that's a good story to tell in movies?
You wanna start, Kalin? Or do you want me to take it?
I think there's definitely some parallels, but I think isn't Shawshank's based on a Stephen King book, I want to say.
Yeah. Ooh, yeah. Yeah, because I think because they're both prison movies, there's always going to be that commonality between an anti-hero having that sort of, because to be in a prison in and of itself inherently, you had to have broken a law or at least been framed. So there has to be some sort of anti-hero aspects to it and sort of being one for the people. But I think more so in Luke's case, he, as we mentioned earlier, he's simultaneously purposeful but also kind of doing things in a nihilistic sense of
and Shawshank
lack of
definitely has a
reason.
better. At the end of it, you definitely feel better, cause, he actually escapes and gets away, and
Right.
his plan. He actually has a plan that comes together. I think it's kind of a similar story, but with 2 completely different characters.
Yeah.
In Shawshank, the main character is wrongly convicted of, he was framed or something for killing his wife, and then he escapes, and justice is served, I guess, because he escapes. The warden kills himself. The sadistic guards are apprehended. So I think it's more of a feel-good movie at the end, even though it's got some pretty dark things in the middle.
Right. And I think the commonality between the two is the philosophical victory of the protagonist. However, Cool Hand Luke takes it from the character dying and it being a martyr sort of situation as opposed to a physical victory as well as a philosophical victory of breaking out. So I think they're very similar in their themes, but like you said, going about it in 2 distinctly different ways. But we're definitely going to be doing an episode on Shawshank at some point. I'll probably have Kalin back so we can talk about Cool Hand Luke in its relation to that. We'll do a really good deep dive so we can all brush up on our knowledge of those 2 films and get it going. So, with that being said, I think we're going to conclude our second episode of Subtitled. Kalin, I really want to thank you for coming through and spending 2.5 hours talking about this awesome
Oh,
film.
thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. All right. Well, we'll see you guys next time. Another one in the can.